Well, the Olympics are starting, at least for rugby, tomorrow, the 24th. They're not going to have the opening ceremonies until a little bit later. In fact, 2 days of competition of the men's sevens tournament will have gone on, along with some soccer and some other stuff, before the opening ceremonies go on. So we're going to have a look at the men's sevens competition and the Olympics, and talk specifically about the USA, and specifically about their chances, and specifically about the most important game they have coming up. The Rugby Sevens competition at the Olympics is a 12-team competition, just like the Sevens World Series has been changed into. So the same rules apply. Pool play, 3 pool games, then the top 2 from each pool go on to the quarterfinals, plus the very best third place teams. That's going to be important, and they decide that based on, of course, points. And look, if you have 3 teams that are 2-1 in a pool, that 2-1 team is probably going to move on. But for the most part, we would expect to see 2 teams that are 1-2 that are going to try and get into those quarterfinals, and they'd be decided on points difference. Wednesday's competition is going to start with Australia versus Samoa and Argentina versus Kenya in Pool B, and that's kind of a stratified pool. It's pretty easy to see who's going to be the top front runners there. Australia and Argentina have had a great season. They're going to do very well. Samoa been up and down, mostly struggling this year, and a long way from the halcyon days when they were winning tournaments and winning and being a contender for the World Series. Kenya, I don't think they're at that quality against Argentina and Australia, and so they're going to struggle. So we're going to see Australia and Argentina play Samoa and Kenya through the day, and then Australia and Argentina will play on the next day, on Thursday, to see who wins the pool. That's going to be pretty standard for us. We're going to revisit that in a bit. Right after that will be Pool C. France plays the USA. Fiji plays Uruguay. Now, we'll bounce back that, just tell you what the other pool is. Pool A, Ireland plays South Africa. This is a pool of death, by the way. And New Zealand plays Japan. Poor Japan. I don't know what's going to happen for them. I think they're going to really struggle in this one. So Ireland, South Africa, New Zealand are in that pool. So let's go back and have a look at what USA is facing, first of all. They faced off France. First off, this is the home team. This is a team that's been on a really good run. Has the USA done well against France? Well, this year, they actually, in the World Series, only played them twice. Early in the season, it was a 21-14 loss. And then more recently, it was a 33-14 drubbing win, where they just sort of overwhelmed France with first half tries. France just sort of didn't show up for that game. This is the Antoine Dupont French Sevens team playing at home, playing in their own Olympics. I have a hard time thinking that they won't be so incredibly fired up for this game, that they won't play their best. It's going to be a very tough game for the USA. Then they bounce back and they go play against Fiji. Well, Fiji, again, we all know Fiji is a great sevens team any day of the week, any year, but come Olympics time, they do even a little bit better. So they are definitely one of the favorites to win gold medal once again. But USA has done relatively well against them this year. Despite the fact the Eagles finished 9th in the World Series standings and had to go to that requalification tournament and requalify, which they did do, they actually did all right against Fiji. They played 4 times. They won once, 19-17. They lost 12-24. They lost 12-42. Okay, that wasn't all right. That was just like the game was gone. And they lost 14-0. But the 1917 win was essentially Perry Baker torching them a couple of times. Perry Baker looking very good in that fairly recent game. So it's a possibility. Once again, both of those games are winnable. But they aren't the most important games for the USA. The most important game is going to be on Thursday, and it's going to be against Uruguay. Why? Simple. No matter what happens on Wednesday, they're going to have to follow that up with a win over Uruguay. There's no doubt about that. So if the Eagles win both their games, they go against Uruguay, it really would behoove them to win that game, win it big, and perhaps get a high enough seed that they have a good quarterfinal matchup. Likelihood of it being a really good quarterfinal matchup, we don't know. But you know who they don't want to really necessarily face in the quarterfinals. So we'll talk about that. If they go 1-1, which is more likely than them going 2-0, then they're staring down the barrel of having to hope for that wild card if they lose, which chances are they won't even necessarily be eligible for, because I'm thinking if they go in and they lose and they end up 1-2, Uruguay would also be 1-2, which would be really weird, but could happen. But being 2-1, you're pretty much guaranteed to be in the quarterfinals. You go 2-1. So if they go in 1-1, they have to put their very best effort against Uruguay. There's no saving it for any other game. And remember, Thursday, the quarterfinals are later in the day. So it goes last pool game and then later in the day quarterfinals. So they're going to have to put everything they have into that game. And then finally, and really the way things have been going, not to run down this team, but there's a good chance they'll be 0-2 going into the Uruguay game. And here's where it gets here is where it gets a little bit more complicated. If you look at what's going to happen through the quarterfinals and can the USA make the quarterfinals, let's imagine that they are 0-2 going in to play in Uruguay. You're going to look at Pool A and be pretty sure that New Zealand and South Africa, I think, are going to be in the quarterfinals. Ireland, almost certainly, even if they go 1-2. I think there's a good chance those three teams go 2-1, but almost certainly, if they go 1-2, they can load up on Japan and get enough points that they'd be able to get one of those spots. Pool B, it's Australia and Argentina, and I think that they're going to put a bit of a hurt on Kenya and Samoa, and so they'll go through comfortably and probably be seated pretty high. Argentina's been on incredible form this year, so they really should be thinking about being the number one seed coming out of there. And I think there's a question about whether the team that finishes third there, whether Samoa or Kenya, and I'm not sure who will be. I'm really not sure on that one, who that's going to be, okay, and whether they get to the quarterfinals. So that's the team that the USA has to be better than, the winner of Samoa Kenya. And it all comes down then to points difference. So not only are the USA going to have to beat Uruguay, they're going to have to beat them well. They looked very, very good in beating Uruguay in that requalification tournament. This was a game that I was personally a little bit nervous about, because in the past Uruguay has done very well to get physically under the skin of the USA team and sort of force them into dumb mistakes, dumb decisions. And then, you suddenly go, how are these Uruguayans so fast? They're not fast, they just change speed so well, and they run hard. So they have to put their entire best effort into that game, no matter what. Win, lose, or 1-1 on day one, on Wednesday, Thursday. Got to beat Uruguay. Got to beat them well. Got to get to the quarterfinals.